Blessings in the Son of God, Jesus Christ, from the beautiful San Gabriel Valley in Southern California. So, of course, unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard about the assassination of political commentator and influence, conservative Charlie Kirk. And, you know, back in 2020, when everybody was predicting the end of the world and FEMA camps and all this stuff, that the jab was the mark of the beast, I was warning people, do not get caught up in sensationalism. What we're headed for is much more dire, much more brutal and violent. And I said back then in 2020, I believe that when 2030 hits, we're going to see the most violent time period in Earth's history. By that time, we'll be 30% done with this century. And yesterday is just an example of where we're headed. You know, a lot of foolish people thought that Trump winning the presidency was the solving of the problems that we have in this nation. The problems we have in this nation are much more deep and ingrained and go back over 145 years, let's say. And they've been building up. We've been in this slow burner, this slow warming up. And what you know is that the enemies of all that is pure, and I'm talking about the left, the liberals, okay, Democrats, the enemies of all that is pure have an atavistic hatred for those that are on the side of wholesomeness, pureness, purity. You know, people that believe in family, getting married, having children, raising them up in Christianity, wanting our country to regain its sovereignty by getting out of the foot or the boot of Zionism. Although Charlie Kirk was a Zionist, but he was starting to question things. And I even wrote an article on my blog in, I believe, was it 2016 that President Trump won his first election? I think it was 2016. Yeah, 2016. The night before the election, I wrote an article, and I said the America on the eve of destruction, because I had already seen the year leading up to President Trump's win. I had heard language I never heard from before, and from most Americans, from mainstream Americans, normies, and they were saying that Trump's going to be this Hitler. He's like Hitler and Nazi. He's a Nazi, this and that. And I knew right there, well, how do these people believe that? It's so foolish. I mean, there's no comparison between the two, and I'm not really a Trump fan, but I'm neutral on Trump. But there's no comparison. But what it showed me is that people are so gullible, easily influenced, easily fooled, and most people, let's just be honest, most people have low IQs or remedial IQs. And when you have a reasonably high IQ, you don't buy into that stuff easily. You research yourself because you love truth. Most of the time, you know, a lot of people with high IQs could also be insane and evil geniuses. And so this happens yesterday, and more and more people, not just in America, but in Europe, are waking up to what the left is really about. It's really Marxism. It's really communism, Bolshevism, repackaged under a different wrapping. But that's exactly what it is. And anybody that knows the history of Bolshevism, communism, Marxism knows that it's very violent, it's very merciless, unforgiving to its enemies. And so I wrote this article, and I said, you know, is America, the America that we once knew, we're in the winter of our lifetime in the America we once knew and loved. And that we're on the eve of destruction because the masses are too foolish to think critically, so they will buy into propaganda. And again, I've seen this. I've seen the rise in the racial tensions all the way back to Obama's presidency. And it was the Michael Brown incident where the cop defended himself, killed Michael Brown, and that really exploded things racially. And we've had a lot of racial attacks recently. I mean, just the last several years, black on white, the media not talking about it, even sometimes creating GoFundMes for the perpetrators. And now you have Charlie Kirk being assassinated, who was really a moderate. He was just a regular moderate conservative. And what's this is doing? It's creating, there are the youth, and this is where a lot of boomers and even Gen Xers are out of touch with reality, because they're still living in the 1960s hippies, Martin Luther King Jr., all this peace stuff, this ideology. They still think they're in that time. And I got news for them. The youth don't care about Martin Luther King. They don't care about the hippies of the 60s and Flower Children, Bob Dylan, and all that stuff, Jimi Hendrix. They do not care. It's a new generation, and they are seeing how they've been sold down the river by the boomers, in part Gen X, which I am, but the government. If you're an American patriot, if you're a Christian, you're an American patriot and you're a Christian, your government despises everything about you and what you stand for. And they're mobilizing the resentful, morally degenerate left to commit acts of violence. This is why you have this trans troon kill these kids at this Catholic school. And the other Christian trans shooting of Christian children in, was it Kentucky? And the people on the left largely celebrated this or said, well, that's what you get. And there is no reconciliation with the left. If you're right wing like I am, and I would consider myself radical right wing, if you're right wing like I am, whatever shade of right wing, there can be no reconciliation with this left in this country. There can be no peace between the left and the right. And that's what a lot of these boomers and Gen Xers are not realizing. They're thinking that this is the 1980s where you have Democrats and Republicans, conservatives, liberals, but they agree to disagree and then go have lunch with each other. We're not in those times anymore. That's a thing of the past. And really, it was always meant to be this way because, again, two opposing worldviews cannot coexist with each other, nor should they. And so what's happening now is there's a galvanization of Americans who love their country, Christians who will not apologize for what the Bible teaches about the idols of the left, of liberals, which is sodomy and abortion. Okay? And this youth is very intolerant. See, they're not like the boomers and even Gen X where we're just very tolerant, and this is a new generation, right? And this political assassination of Charlie Kirk, you're going to see more of it. And again, this is a long, drawn-out war of attrition. I told people that in 2020, there is no rapture coming. Nobody's coming to save you out of this. This is something we are headed for, a long, drawn-out war of attrition. And I believe we're headed for decades of brutal violence. And I told my own son, I said, you better have your head on a swivel everywhere you go. Head on a swivel. And you talk about, I have it on a swivel. And that's where we're headed. Now, as Christians, obviously, we're seeking to live righteous lives and be peaceful. But that doesn't mean you're Pollyanna. That doesn't mean you go around thinking everything's all good and you don't seek to protect your family. Like, for example, some black guy, as my son was going to the store, and I live we're from a Hispanic neighborhood, always has been Hispanic. Told my son, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Like in a very aggressive tone. My son got off his bike, went up to him, said, "I'm here. This is my neighborhood. I'll go wherever I want." But that's a situation we're living in. My son told me, "This is a Hispanic neighborhood. This is my neighborhood. I go wherever I want." But my point is that we're living in this situation that you better be prepared. I mean, and again, coming from a Catholic background, Catholics believe in fighting. We believe in being warriors. Now, I'm a primitive Catholic. I'm not a Roman Catholic. We believe in being Christian crusaders. And so what this is now is a battle cry. People are galvanizing together on the right. Patriots, there's documents from the early 1970s that Bill Cooper has exposed from the FBI, from the CIA, from the Department of Defense, that patriots and Christians are the number one enemy of the country. The very people that founded this country, the very people that have upheld the beauty of this country and the Constitution, are now deemed public enemy number one by our own government. And you got to walk with the confidence that we're returning this country back to Christ. But it's going to be a long, drawn-out war of attrition, as I said. Being a Christian doesn't mean you put your head in the sand and just wait for Jesus to come rescue you out of here. Being a Christian means you're vigilant and you don't allow evil to prosper, because evil's morally weak, right? People that are evil, they're moral cowards, and they're cowards. Like that guy, my son that went up to that guy backed down when my son stepped up to him. And I walk around knowing that in the environment we live in, things could spark off at any time. And my point is that Christian men, this is all on us. We got to step up and be willing to fight. I'm tired of Christians waiting for a rapture, waiting for Jesus to come rescue them out of here because they don't want to stand up and fight. And it's the Christian attitude of, well, I'm not going to get involved in politics. I'm not going to, this and that, is why our country's ended up the way it is, because of Christian cowards like Jehovah's Witnesses and all these other pacifistic Christians that don't have the balls to fight evil. When I look at the history of Christianity, Christians fought. Why? Because a real man protects his nation, protects his wife, his children, his community. And if they were willing to assassinate a Charlie Kirk, who is a moderate, who just has very normal mainstream, once mainstream views, what would they do to a radical? Someone who believes that and I don't know if Charlie Kirk believed this, but I believe this should be a Christian nation, a Christian republic. That's why I tell Christians, man, start. Like, I have a shirt that says Christ is King and has a red cross. I mean, it just stands out. And people look at it. And I walk around head held high, not apologizing for my blatant profession of Christ, because that was once a normal thing in this nation. And it's okay if people feel uncomfortable about it. Make them feel uncomfortable. Because we need to reclaim this nation for Christ. What's at stake? The stake is your children's future. That poor Ukrainian girl that got stabbed on a train. They got stabbed on a train. And people just looked. And you better recognize that what if you are a Christian and you're a patriot and you love what is good and wholesome, you are vilified and resented to the tilt by these degenerate, dysgenic leftists who hate life. They're life-denying, life-hating people for whatever reason. For whatever reason. See, the left, they destroy. All these neighborhoods, Compton, Watts, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Chicago, Memphis, look at them. They're all destitute ghettos because the leftists destroy. See, those who are on the right, traditionalist Christians, we build. Notice the difference. And so you have an angry, resentful left that just wants to destroy society. They're like the Joker in The Dark Knight. They just want to see the world burn because they don't love beauty. Those on the right, they love beauty. Look at the beautiful Christian nations that have been built over the 2,000 years, the beautiful architecture. That is the manifest evidence of the Christian biospirit. Beauty. And so we're in a world that hates beauty. We're in a world that hates that which is wholesome and pure. And people that represent that. And you have these trans troons going and killing Christian children. But Christians and Americans, they're waking up. And we do need a new crusade. See, I've read about the Crusades. I know what they're about. I don't buy into morons that just speak, oh, the Crusades were real. No, you didn't do your research then, if that's what you think. See, I research things for myself because I want to know the truth about things. To be a lover of truth is to be the ultimate philosopher. So you got to know that what we're headed for is war, civil war. And there is no peace with the left. Don't ever think that. There is no peace with these leftist pigs. Anyways, I'm out.